Hey guys, welcome to Boxing Squared for boxing news and views from around the internet. This is the post-fight review for Daniel Dubois and Razvan Cojanu. So this was relatively as expected that Dubois would win. It was just a matter of how. Would he get a knockout? Would he upstage Nathan Gorman and defeat Cojanu sooner than Gorman did? Gorman was taking the distance 12 rounds back in December. And he didn't disappoint, actually. He came in, he looked fairly good, and knocked him out in the second round. It was over pretty quickly. But it was an interesting fight for a few reasons. I think Razvan Cojanu threw more punches in this fight than he might have thrown in his whole career. He was looking to mix it with Daniel Dubois, but as a result of that, he was more open. So obviously he was open to getting hit more, and he was hit more, and ultimately, some of the weight of the punches wore him down. And there was the odd low blow in there which the referee did warn Daniel Dubois about, but that wasn't so much of a factor in the final sequence. Ultimately, a left hook really did some damage in a sequence of punches that he was throwing. He was letting his hands go. Another left hook landed, devastated Cojanu, and a right hand finished him off. And Cojanu, from the way he fell onto his leg. I kind of thought, yeah, this is over now. He tried to get up, but, he was all over the place. Razvan Cojanu could not continue, and he was knocked out. It was waved off, and Daniel Dubois gets a very impressive win for his 10th pro fight. And as a result of this performance, he picks up the WBO European title. So that had been vacant, and I believe Christian Hammer only won that back in December, so he must have vacated it as well. And previous to that, Ali Erendemiresian, he held that belt. So it's kind of been passed around like candy at the moment, but Daniel Dubois picks up that strap. And as a result of that, he guarantees pretty much that he will be ranked within the WBO in the next rankings update, which should come around the 28th, 29th of March. That's generally about that time of the month that the WBO reissues its rankings. And they put a lot of stock in the regional belt holders, so Daniel Dubois with this strap almost has guaranteed himself a ranking. I think Frank Warren said he would be top 10. I'm not sure if he will get into the top 10, but he will definitely at least be somewhere in the 15. After the fight, Daniel Dubois was interviewed, and I actually had my headphones off for 30 seconds, so I missed that. I'm sure he was sort of talking it up as in a good performance, and he's pretty brief and muted with some of those comments. But Gorman, they spoke to him. He said it was a good performance from Daniel Dubois, but when he was asked, well, can you beat Daniel Dubois? He said, yeah, of course. Styles make fights, and my style beats Daniel Dubois. And he was sort of asked, well, you were taking the distance. It was 2 rounds knockout for Daniel Dubois. And he was like, well, it was a good performance. I only had a week's notice before facing Cojanu, but no excuses. He did the job and did it well, but styles make fights. And he said he wants to meet him in the ring as soon as possible. And Frank Warren, he was interviewed, and he said Daniel Dubois, when he hits them, it's lights out. He said it was a tremendous win, a statement win. But he said both Daniel Dubois and Nathan Gorman, the stablemates, Frank Warren's heavyweights, need more fights before they meet. But he said they will do it before the end of this year. I'm still a little unsold that this fight will happen this year, because at the end of the day, it's a business, and Frank Warren will want to make some money off this. And if their names aren't to a certain point where they can make, money hand over fist, I'm not sure if it will make sense at this point, because he will be, to some extent, sacrificing one of them and their value for a certain period in their career. So, I could see maybe next year, I sort of said last year, if he's really talking about a stadium fight of 30 or 40,000 people, which he's mentioned, this is what he's saying. I kind of think, this is what I was saying about 6 months ago, that's kind of 2 years away. They need to be, basically at the level sort of fringe contenders, where at the moment, Gorman's just entering that sort of, end of his prospect phase, and Dubois is still in that learning prospect phase, but they're not too far away off, being contenders in the division. And, there is the school of thought that says throw them in now, and, it's not really going to affect one of them, but it's hard to say. And if the idea is to sort of make money from them, because promoters, that's kind of their job and what they look to do, I'm not sure there's enough value in that fight right now. Some of it will depend on the opponents that they have next, but he had talked about 4 or 5 fights this year before they meet, so they need to be out almost every second month to really sort of achieve that. And it's already March, and if they're going to sort of get that fight and have a number of fights in between to build them, then they need to get cracking on that. But I would hazard a guess if they're going to have them out that frequently before they meet, and maybe that's optimistic, maybe it's only going to be 2 or 3 more fights this year max, but if it was to be 4 or 5 fights this year before... That was quite the loud motorbike, wasn't it? But if there was to be that many fights before they do meet, I'd kind of think, well, the opposition might not be that good, and it's kind of, they have to strike that balance now where the opponent actually needs to be of a certain level to get fans interested. And you can argue that Razvan Cojanu, for both Nathan Gorman and Daniel Dubois, was a decent learning fight, but it was always going to go one way. Many expected that Razvan Cojanu just wasn't going to offer enough. Generally, he doesn't throw enough punches. He's a bit too negative, and, you know, that proved to be the case against Nathan Gorman. He did throw his hands more against Daniel Dubois, but that kind of probably ended the fight a bit earlier than it otherwise would have. I still think Dubois probably would have knocked him out, but perhaps it would have gone a few more rounds if he had should have shelled up a bit more. But he was really trying to throw those hands. But Razvan Cojanu, sort of with the title shot in his back pocket and some of the opposition that is faced, sort of flatters to deceive. You know, he hasn't won since 2016 now. He's now got 6 losses on the record. There's only so much credit and value you can get from that win. He's just a big human body who's been a pretty decent sparring partner for quite a number of years. And he took an opportunity when it came. And that was against Joseph Parker. And I guess you could sort of say that this performance and the Luis Ortiz performance, because they both knocked out Razvan Cojanu in 2 rounds, Ortiz and Dubois, you can kind of say, well, that puts Joseph Parker's and Nathan Gorman's power into question. Parker did clip Cojanu a number of times, didn't really seem to hurt him or rock him or rattle him to any extent. But Daniel Dubois took care of business. Luis Ortiz took care of business. Nathan Gorman started well, but then sort of petered off, and, you know, the questions about the power in the gas tank. And if you were to look at that fight now, who would win that? I think Daniel Dubois, if he catches Nathan Gorman, Gorman might be in trouble, but we haven't seen his chin tested, and neither really have we seen Daniel Dubois' chin tested. Cojanu probably threw the most punches that have been thrown at Daniel Dubois, but didn't really land too many punches clean. It's sort of all, you know, cuffing shots, or he was throwing them, they're sort of blocked or whatever. But I did like the ambition from Cojanu, but I kind of thought, well, he's throwing his hands, that means he's going to be open to be hit, and he was knocked out. But Nathan Gorman and Daniel Dubois, it's certainly coming down the pipe at some point. This year might be a little optimistic. And remember, this fight had already been ordered by the British Boxing Board of Control. So they had ordered this one and Frank Warren said no. And that would have been for about this time this year. So yeah, we'll have to see where things go. They need to work on their profiles. They need to get some more statement wins and look good to really sort of get some fan involvement and get some fans, sort of the hype train going, if they're ever to build that fight. And I had some people in my previous video where I sort of said the buzz and the hype for Daniel Dubois, and it sort of ebbed off, and he's not doing enough to sort of, you know, connect with fans and that sort of stuff. Some people said, well, you know, Daniel Dubois doesn't need the pressure of this, but regardless of, you know, whether he needs the pressure or not, it is there. It is there. He's a top 5 heavyweight prospect in the heavyweight division. The pressure is always there. Sure, Frank Warren had been working that angle for quite a while, trying to build Anthony Joshua comparisons. You know, there was that sparring story of Joshua getting dropped by Dubois. And since the Kevin Johnson fight, some of that sort of buzz around Dubois has ebbed off. But the connecting with fans part, you know, Dubois needs to do better with that, especially if they ever want to, you know, him to build a significant fan base to lead to these bigger stadium fights that they're talking about. Frank Warren can only do so much, and the ring performance, that can only do so much. There is an element of out of the ring, you know, just, you know, smiling in front of the camera, being a bit jovial. Not that it's just a real pain and a burden to be on camera and feeling, you know, being all awkward and stuff. And hopefully we will see some development on that front from Daniel Dubois, because there kind of is that whole packaging of a fighter these days. It's not just the in-the-ring performance. And whether we like it or not, because he is such a highly regarded blue-chip prospect, he is a guy that, is always going to be under some sort of scrutiny. And he did a very good job tonight against Razvan Cojanu. He's probably silenced a few of the doubters who'd been on him after that Kevin Johnson performance. But Kevin Johnson is a very durable guy, and he sort of shelled up, didn't throw many punches. Whereas tonight, Razvan Cojanu showed, he can sort of put it on Dubois. He sort of shook off the bit of pressure that Cojanu showed and was able to land his work cleanly, effectively, and knock out Razvan Cojanu. It was a good effort. So a good performance. It's a statement of sorts, but it was always going to be like this. This wasn't a 50-50. Dubois was the 95-5 favourite. It was going to be all one-way traffic, and that's ultimately how it panned out. What'd you make of it? Drop a comment, loud and often. Hit like, hit subscribe, follow me on Twitter, boxing_squared. I'm out.